Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the Knit Girls.
This is episode 178,
178.
version 5.
Yes. Fifth time's the charm.
Yeah.
So, because we've recorded the same episode 4 prior times, and Leslie's sick of hearing about my girl crush on Clara Parks, we're going to do things a little bit differently this time. So, earlier in the day, Leslie opened a thread on Ravelry called Not Your Typical Episode, where we took questions from some of the people in our group.
Yes.
And we are going to answer them. And we should introduce ourselves probably first.
Yes. If this is your first time watching us, this probably isn't the episode to start with. Go back a couple or whatever.
Or it might be, and you can get the feel for us, and then go back and actually...
It's not our standard format, so it's much less
a good way of saying.
Today is a lot more chatting about us personally versus the knitting. So, I'm Leslie, also known as You Don't Call Me Les.
I'm Laura, also known as Lala. And we will talk about what we're knitting on, because it drives me crazy when I see someone knitting on something and I want to ask them what it is. And they don't answer, because they're in the TV. I know.
That dang linear time, man.
I know. So what are you working on, Leslie?
I am working on a plain vanilla sock. It is in the intentional flashing base by Fishnets, and this is the Pretty Bird colorway. So it's dyed intentionally to flash like this, which I don't understand how that works. She must be some kind of math genius. This is what it looks like in the cake. And I got 2 colors of this. I bought 2 colors of this right after SSK because she's donated door prizes to SSK, which is the knitting event that we put on in the summer both years, and she's been super sweet, and I've just had been eyeing her yarn for a long time, so it was time for me to get some. What are you knitting?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment that you're magic looping, it looks like.
I am. I'm magic looping on a US size 1, 2.25 millimeter, and these are my Sock Rocket needles.
Cool.
And they're made by Addie.
I just started something because I needed something new and bright and cheerful. So this is a toe. And I am knitting this on my Carbons size 2 needles. They are 2.75, and the rest of the yarn looks like this. It's a little bit of a mess on the bottom.
That's bright.
It is a self-striping sport weight from Yarntini.
Oh, cool. And
let's see, where did I put the bag? I have it in a Fat Squirrel. Way too big for a bag, but I like the bag, and I can fit all the things in it. So this is Yarntini Wool Bar, and the colorway is Home.
That's pretty. Is that Deep Stash?
No, this is New Stash.
Oh.
Actually. She had, I follow her on Instagram, mainly to stalk her for yarn, because she does irregular updates, I think would be the best way of putting it. So, she updates, but not on a regular, like, not every Monday or
as often as possible, but it's not, yeah.
She has little ones, so obviously, and the Loopy U, the way I found her is the Loopy U used to carry her years and years and years ago, so I have some of her regular, like, that's a deep vintage stash. It's almost like special skein I'm hoarding because it's hard to get her yarn now, so it's being hoarded. In fact, I had a pair of socks that was a work in progress that I ripped out so I could save the yarn. They were Jaywalkers, and they weren't going to fit my feet anyways.
Jaywalker's a tricky one with the bias.
They are, and it was probably like the 5th pair of socks I had ever cast on. So, back when the Loopy U was less than 6 months old, maybe?
Yeah.
So, I ripped that out, and that's back in the stash now. It was like the Grape Ape colorway, something like that.
I like that
Which makes me smile. It's from a cartoon from the 70s.
Yeah, it sounds vaguely familiar.
But anyway, so we have a series of questions, and the first question...
So I want to first, before we start answering questions, I want to say that if we answered every question, this would probably be 3 hours long. And while a lot of our viewers would be totally fine with that, I don't want to push my tech luck this week, so any questions that we don't answer, we're going to answer one each week until we answer them all. So the first one is from Beagle Mom.
Beagle Mom Knitter.
Mm-hmm. And she wants to know a recap of how and when we learned to knit, why we love knitting, and an in-depth interview with Humberto, which it would just be his butt for 30 minutes. That's all it would be.
And he's sleeping, and I'm afraid to wake him up because he's vindictive when woken from catnips.
And also some information about what you do in real life, like your job, without being too specific.
Okay. Do you want to go first, or shall I?
Why don't you?
Okay. So how I learned to knit was when I was 8 years old. Mama Linneman, my mom, had learned how to knit. She is primarily a spinner, weaver, and now a quilter. And
sewing, yeah. She does. Yeah, and she used to sew your clothing when you were young, right?
Yes, definitely. And so she learned how to knit socks because she had to learn them for a class that all the spinners, and she wanted to take a class with Calf Facet, and she had to learn to knit how to take it. So her spinning guild buddies taught her how to knit with a pair of socks. So how she taught me how to knit when I was 8 was she cast on the cuff of a sock and then had me knitting around on double points. And by the heel turn, I was done.
You were over it.
I was over it. It was done. And I picked it back up when I was 18 or 19, and I had gotten my wisdom teeth out and just basically was lying on the couch watching the Scooby-Doo movie over and over and over again because I love that movie because I love Mr. Bean's role in that.
The goofy CGI one?
Yes, the one with Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes. Sarah Michelle Gellar, there you go.
As Daphne, hilarious. Like, hilarious. I'll watch that movie and over again to this day. And it's so bad. It's good. So I learned how to knit that time on a garter stitch scarf. It's some yarn that we picked up at the Bridgeville Yarn Shop, which is no longer in business now. It's been bought. I shouldn't say it's no longer in business. I think it's changed hands.
Okay.
So that's basically how my knitting came about. How about that?
When you picked the scarf back up, have you been knitting ever since? Were there breaks?
Yeah. No, not so much breaks. When I lived in North Carolina for 2 years, there was a lot of Lion Brand knitting because all I had close to me was a Hobby Lot. Actually, it was a Hancock Fabrics.
Yeah.
It was the only place like within a 45-minute drive to get yarn. But yeah, no, I've been knitting. It keeps me out of trouble for the most part, or puts me in trouble, depending on the day. So how did you learn how to knit?
The site is called TheKnitGirlls with 3 L's for a reason, actually. We started it
as a blog.
As a blog with Laura, myself, and our friend Alicia, who went by Lish. That was her nickname. And so there were 3 L's. And so we started TheKnitGirlls with 3 L's. And it was a blog. And actually, I think all the old posts are still on there if anybody cares to go way, way, way back. But we were really terrible about keeping the blog
That's why there were 3 of us. At least like one of us would post a week.
That was the idea, but it didn't happen. But anyway, so my friend Alicia came over. I think my son was probably 3 or 4, and she came over to my house, and we were sitting and chatting and watching TV, and she pulled out knitting. It was like this big Icelandic single ply wool. I can't remember what it was. And
probably Lopi.
It might be, yeah. It looked like Lopi. That's what I'm picturing in my head, so that might be what it was. And she was just knitting a garter stitch scarf. And I was like, And I've always been a competitive person, and it's a terrible, terrible thing sometimes. And I was like, I can do that. If she can do that, I can totally do that. So the next week, I went out and bought a bunch of yarn at there was a local shop then. I don't know if it's still there. The Knitting Universe or whatever. What is it? Yarniverse.
Yarniverse?
Yeah.
Yes, it's still there.
In
it's
Memphis.
Off of Poplar. Yep.
And bought a lot of a ton of overpriced chenille yarn and silly things, and started knitting. And I very quickly decided to do socks and hats, and I was actually pretty lucky because I was only a knitter for maybe 6 months before Ravelry came about. And of course Ravelry opens up a whole new world to knitters. I mean, it's just done amazingly wonderful things, and to this day I am comfortable going up to any famous teacher or like knitting related teacher, spinner, anything like that, and making a complete ass of myself by introducing myself and saying, oh, I love this or I love that. But I am too nervous to go and say hello to Jess and Casey when I see them at festivals because I'm like, you made such an awesome thing. I don't want to ruin it by embarrassing myself in front of you. But
that's cute.
I saw Casey and his daughter Eloise at the festival this weekend, but I didn't say anything.
Fun. You creeper.
I did creep, but I didn't like take a picture or anything. I just I saw them from afar. But yeah, so that's how I started knitting. Let's talk more about you and what you do for real life.
So in real life, I am a middle school librarian at a public school. My public school is one that has a high free and reduced lunch ratio. So we are a Title I school. And it's hard to describe what I do on a typical day. I can tell you since August I've checked out over 9,000 books because I had to run that report today. But for me, the fun comes, and you know, I teach media skills and how to do safe web searches, but the fun comes with finding that perfect book that connects with a kid.
Right.
That they read and they come back and they say, oh, Miss Linneman, I love this. What else do you have like this?
Yeah.
And making that light bulb just turn on. It's like the sun coming out of that child.
It's so funny because Laura will occasionally have, you know, a bad day. Somebody's been, you know, something goes wrong or a kid's been a jerk or whatever. And so she'll, you know, we'll talk about it. And in my mind, there's not enough money in the world to make me teach middle school. Like, there are people whose temperament can deal with it, and there are people who cannot. And
it takes a lot of patience.
I just am not there. And I fully respect teachers of every single grade and age because there's difficulties that go along with all of it. But one day, a couple of years ago, before I moved, obviously, I had the day off work, and Laura didn't. And so she said that I should bring her sushi to work.
Obviously, because I like sushi.
I was like, whatever, that's fine. I'm off work. I'll bring you sushi, and we'll sit and we'll eat. And it was really fun to actually get to see her interact with the kids because not only do you really enjoy teaching, but the kids really like you. Like, they like your personality.
It depends on the day, but yeah.
They get along with you. Like, they know how to interact and be funny, but not be disrespectful. So it was nice to see that.
It's fun. They're all good kids. Sometimes they don't make the right choices, but they're all good kids.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky with my population that I teach. Anyway, do you want to talk about what you do?
Sure. I work in a cubicle. It's very glamorous. So the reason that we moved a year ago from Mississippi to New Jersey is that my significant other, Michael, he was offered a job that he really loved. And basically, we're both in the same general department. We're both working corporate IT for a gaming company. And he really loves his job of making the servers talk to each other, like all the different platforms and all this stuff, like work together.
I have a picture of little computers now talking
now
to
they're
each
having
other
a conversation. They're having high tea. He really loves his job. If he didn't really love it, then I wouldn't have moved for it. I do not love my job, but I like my job, and I can do my job. And basically, I'm software support for a very specific piece of software that our casino has developed. So basically, it's a program that you couldn't support if you've never used. So that's what I do. I work in a cubicle with 3 other people in the same cubicle in a pod of other cubicles. It's like Office Space, but not as funny.
Do you have a stapler?
I do not have a stapler. It's probably for the best. But I do have, there are benefits. I can work from home if I'm ill or just feeling gross or whatever. My boss is in Las Vegas, Nevada, so she's 2,000 miles away from me, but I like her. So, yeah, that's what I do for a living. What's our next question?
If you had to de-stash your entire stash except for one yarn and one fiber, you want to skip that one?
I want to answer the question, but not really answer the question. So this is from Craft R, and her question was, if you had to de-stash your entire stash except for one yarn and one fiber, what would it be? I refuse to answer this question because the thought of it, when I read that question for the first time, my heart like started fluttering, and I was like, oh my god, I can't make this choice. Which in reality, if it came to it, I could. But I don't want to have to think about that. So instead, I picked out one special skein. And I was going to talk about it.
I have one special skein too, so that works out perfect.
So there's nothing inherently special about the yarn itself. This is Woolly Bully. And
I love Woolly Bully.
Superwash sock. It's 80% wool and 20% nylon. And it's in the Moonflowers.
I've tried to steal that from you before.
Moonflowers for the Yarn Grove. That must have been the yarn shop, Yarn Grove. Hand dyed by Jenny Bully. And the reason that this is a special skein to me is that after the first spring fling, which was, I had been knitting maybe a year when we went to spring fling the first time. We met Megan, Crafty Pancakes. And we have some great pictures of the yarn that she bought with. It was like in this little mountain. Anyway, it was really funny.
Yeah.
And she was really sweet. And after she went back, I don't know, a few months later, she de-stashed some things. And so she, you know, this was back when everybody was still using Plurk, I think. And so she put up a link and she, you know, said, here are some things I'm de-stashing. If anybody wants it, let me know. And so she had prices and all that. And I remember I sent her a note and I said, oh, that one Moonflowers is lovely. It's so beautiful, but I'm not buying any yarn right now. And then she just sent it to me.
That's sweet. She's such a sweet person. I love that yarn. That yarn, actually, I have a pair of my favorite socks that I've ever knit is out of Woolly Bully.
It's like a blue and green or something, right? I remember you knit
like
out of
reds and browns and
then
turquoise.
I'm not thinking about the right thing. But she just sent it to me, and it I don't know, it kind of opened up my world of how
the kindness of knitters.
Yes. You know, people that you maybe met once, maybe people you've never met. How completely kind people can be. And so this is one of those, like, I have to find the absolute perfect thing before this will ever even get caked. It makes me happy. So, anyway, that's my special skein. What's your special skein?
So, my special skein doesn't have a fun story behind it like that. But it's one, I think I've shown it actually before on the show. When Sherry of the Loopy U first announced that she was carrying Volmiza, and then she started carrying the Volmiza lace, I scooped this up, and it is Raku Regenbogen in the lace.
Which is the rainbow colorway.
Yep, and you can see the old
label.
Yep. Yep. And I've had this in the stash for forever, and it's just my skein that is the happy place skein. Like, it is rainbows and sunshine and happiness, and unicorns might have farted up this yarn. But it just makes me extremely happy. And I don't know when I'm going to knit with it. It's going to have to be the very absolute perfect project. Yeah. Maybe a pie shell of some kind.
It'd be fun. But, there are some projects that I've seen, and I don't mean to interrupt your story, but it just made me think.
No, you're fine.
There are some projects with that one lady, and I'll have to look her up, who does a lot of patterns based on using pooling schemes.
Yeah.
So that they everything looks beautiful, and it looks like it was intentionally dyed that way, and it's all in like lines and stuff.
That'd be fun.
It'd be fun to do something like that.
Yeah. But it's one of the very first skeins of hers that I ever bought from the Loopy U, and I just love Claudia. We were fortunate enough to meet her at Spring Fling several years.
Yep.
And
you actually ordered from Claudia before, when you could just email her and tell her you wanted this color and this color, right?
No, well, I didn't order from Claudio's shop. I ordered from the Loopy U the first like 3 or 4 times Sherry put it up, and it would sit there for weeks because people had no idea what the yarn was. And I had gone over to her website and created like a list of colorways that I knew. I still have that notebook somewhere. And I'm still crossing off my colorways that someday I'll get. Like Petite Poison #5's on there.
Yeah, I thought you had that one.
I have a We're Different version.
Oh, okay.
But there's just some, Leslie got me Vincent one year, and that would have to be a close second of favorite skeins.
She does beautiful yarn.
She does. I love it. And it's got great yardage. Like, that lace would take me forever to knit. So, and she's just such a sweet person.
She is. She's very funny.
So, let's see. Lurking Knitter said, favorite FO, or the one that you're most proud of, or the one that you use the most. So that's the first part. So okay. Favorite FO.
We skipped a question, but we'll go back to it now.
Oh, really? I'm sorry.
We'll answer this one, then we'll go back to it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I scrolled down too fast.
I do not have really a favorite FO. I'd say probably the thing I wear the most is my Pinnate cardigan, the Amy Christoffers cardigan that I knit in Christopher's, not Christoffers, cardigan that I knit in a gray cotton cashmere blend. I probably wear that the most. But a lot of the stuff I end up giving away or gets put in a drawer, so I'm bad about that. But you have something that you wear a lot, right?
Well, my thing that I'm most proud of probably, and it's an old one. I don't know that we were doing the podcast when I knit this.
Yes, the Lady Bertram.
Shawl.
Right?
Yep, it's the Lady Bertram. It's by Wendy Johnson, and the yarn is hand spun that I spun, and this was the first fingering weight hand spun 2-ply that I ever did. So looking at it now with a critical eye, I'm like, oh, it's a little thick and thin in places, but this was my very first. It's a merino silk, and the fiber was from Sanguine Griffin. And I just loved it with the shawl pattern, and it probably needs to be reblocked in a bad way. But I love Wendy Johnson. I'm lucky enough to consider her a friend, regardless of how she thinks of me.
You will love me.
And I just, it's the perfect, I don't know, it was my first 2-ply that I got 400 yards out of. So it's probably my favorite, most proud of FO. The second part of that question was, is there a unicorn project, something that you really want to make but find it too intimidating / difficult for you for any reason?
Do you?
Steeking. Anything with steeking.
Oh.
I'm not a sewer or crocheter, so the thought of putting in steeks intimidates me a little bit.
I don't think, and I looked at this for a little bit today and thought and went through my queue to see of the things that I'd queued, like the oldest things that I'd queued, and maybe there was something in there, but there's really, I don't necessarily think that there is a single unicorn project for me. Most techniques that I want to learn, I just do, and screw it up usually, and then do it right. Steeking doesn't bother me. You know, lace and beading don't bother me usually. I've no desire whatsoever to knit intarsia.
Intarsia, yeah.
I wouldn't call it a unicorn thing. There's not enough pretty intarsia out there for me to try to deal with it. I'd rather just duplicate stitch, honestly. But I would say that in a general sense, my unicorn project would be a fingering weight sweater, because I'm a large person. My bust is 48 inches at the fullest part, and every time I hear a thin person talk about slogging through a sweater, it makes me a little ragey, which is ridiculous because everybody is beautiful in its own way. But there's a lot more slog in this than there is in a lot of people. So the idea of knitting, 600 stitches in a round or whatever it would be just makes me want to throw up. But I want a fingering weight sweater, so one day I will. But I guess that's probably my unicorn project.
Okay. And then the last was the Right Now This Is My Favorite skein of indie yarn. I think we kind of already covered that with favorite skein. Or the Cold Dead Hand skein.
I don't know that I have a favorite indie because I love so many things about so many different indies. Like,
yeah,
Cakewalk. I love the splotchy, like...
Someone had her sincerest in our Halloween knit-along, craft-along that's going on. She, I guess, did a colorway based on the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and it's the sincerest because Linus always says he has the most sincerest pumpkin patch, so that's why he'll come. I love that colorway.
Yeah,
I hope Rose comes back.
I do too. I know she's been dealing with a bunch of stuff and moving and all that, so
yeah.
But I love that about her. I love certain bases from certain dyers, regardless of what the colors are. I love certain people who do striping. I could never pick one, I don't think, unless I were forced at gunpoint, and we're not playing that game. So, the question we skipped was from Queen Busick. What was your favorite Rhinebeck moment? For me, this year... I don't know. I would say because I definitely went this year with no plan. I was shopping for a couple of people, but it didn't require me to be like in any booth at any specific time. So I was able to really just wander and do whatever I wanted, and I talked to so many people, and I met so many nice people, and I don't know that I could pick one moment. I mean, it was fun. Probably, if I had to pick, it would be the final afternoon on Saturday or Sunday. We just sat, there's a hill where the Ravelry meetup is every year, where we just sat and knit for maybe an hour or two. Just took it all in, and we could see the dog shows from where we were, and it was nice to just sit and be in this beautiful landscape. It was very peaceful.
Did you catch the pumpkin chunkin'?
I did. They didn't have it this year.
What?
I know. They had dog frisbee shows, and I did watch the Leaping Llamas, which was really funny.
I don't think I've seen the Leaping Llamas before. I don't remember that being there.
They jump over a pole, kind of like Limbo, but the opposite way. It's really funny, and then, you know, they're out and all that. It's really funny. The Froggy Monkey Knitting in Circles podcast has a video at the end of it this week that's got the Leaping Llamas. I'm told. I haven't seen it yet. And what is your favorite Halloween book, she wants to know.
Okay, I'm going to do 5, I think.
Oh, Jesus.
Because all good things come in 5. And all of these are, I might have less than 5. I don't know. All of these are young adult / upper elementary books. So, definitely Bunnicula in that whole series. Have you read Bunnicula?
I've read Bunnicula, but I haven't read the rest of them.
Okay, it's narrated by a dog, and it's about a vampire bunny. Hilarious. And James Howe, the author, has actually written a lot of YA stuff I really like as well, in addition to that entire series, which is available on the Kindle, and now I have it all. Coraline, which is also on my Kindle, by Neil Gaiman. While we're on Neil Gaiman, The Graveyard Book, definitely.
I was mixed on The Graveyard Book.
See, did you realize that it was a spoof on The Jungle Book when you read it? Did that change your mind?
Jungle Book in probably 25 years.
Have you seen the movie The Jungle Book? Okay.
A long time ago.
When you think of it in regards from like an adult literary perspective, where that is a spoof, like not a spoof, but meant to be similar to The Jungle Book, it kind of changes it a little bit. But I still think that has the best opening line of any kid's book. If you want to hook a child, there was a hand in the darkness and it held a knife. Best opening line ever. Can you tell I book talked that last week? Because I totally did. I read half of the first chapter.
What was the best opening line of a book that I've read? And it would have to be, it was an Anne Rice book. And it wasn't an interview, it might have been Lestat. And it talked about males being castrated for their soprano voice. That was like, okay, I'm paying attention now. Okay, anyway, back to your list.
Wait Till Helen Comes by Mary Donnelly Hahn, which is one of the first true ghost stories I think I ever read. It is about a girl who, her and her brother, I believe, have a new like stepsister. Her mom's remarried, and they moved to this old church that's becoming their house, and there's a graveyard. and there's a ghost there who is trying to lure them to drown in the pond.
So it's a mood lifter.
Yeah, well, it's a ghost story. It's a true ghost story. I like Mary Downing Hans. She's great for reluctant readers that like the creepy stuff. So, Bunnicula, Graveyard Book, Coraline, Wait Till Helen Comes. I don't know. There's so many good vampire type books for YA right now. My favorite, and it's an older one, and this is not really Halloween besides the fact that it's got a vampire, is Dark Angel by Meredith Ann Pierce, I believe it is. Meredith Ann Pierce, maybe. And it's a different take on vampires, and it's definitely an older one. But anyway, there's 5 for you. I have 5 fingers, so that works out well.
You have the right number.
But, yeah, anyway. So that's my favorite Halloween books. I know I'm missing probably one of my favorites, but I love Bunnicula. You can't go wrong with Bunnicula. How They Croaked is also, I might bump Dark Angel for How They Croaked, which is a nonfiction book, how all these famous people died. Like George Washington died from an infection in his mouth.
I remember you telling me about this.
So, it's a pretty cool book, and like how Mozart died, and how Henry VIII died, and they suspect that Edgar Allan Poe had rabies, but you can't really prove it. So, interesting things. All right. So, Sandykins would like us to come to Sweden.
I would love to come to Sweden, Sandykins. She's in the States right now, actually.
Oh, really?
She's in Maine.
That's fun. Oh, is she?
I think she's at Heather's
super fun.
Highlands on the Fly retreat.
Oh, cool. Well, she's fun. So she just asked us to come to.
I would love to make that happen.
I would love to.
I don't think it's in the KnitGirll's budget, though.
No, not so much. Susie Knitster wants to know, how about a project you grew to hate but just had to finish it?
Oh, goodness. I have one of those.
I am going with the featherweight sweater.
I remember that.
The featherweight sweater, I had to finish it because Jessica, Show Me Your Knits, and I were racing, and I'm competitive.
I think you both hated that sweater by the time you finished. Yeah. Like, you both hated your individual sweaters.
It is done out of Malabrigo lace, which is a lace weight single ply yarn. At least that's what I knit mine out of, and I did not, that was a time period where I didn't realize that I should alternate skeins.
Oh, yeah.
And mine has a very distinct change in colors, so that makes it even better. But also, I think I looked at that sweater and it began felting, because it's a merino single,
yeah,
so there's no real structure to keep it together, and it's a very short staple fiber, merino is. And I'll throw it on, like, I got guilted into wearing it to SSK, I think, the first year, because everyone was talking about how awesome their featherweights were, and I was like, I'm totally going to wear mine, and I wore it for like 5 seconds and remembered why I hate it. So, it's actually in a dresser. I pulled it out when I got this out earlier.
Oh.
So, anyway. What project? Do you have a project that you grew to hate but had to finish?
I was pulling it up. That's why. Okay. I wasn't being rude. I was pulling it up. Well, if I was being rude, it was for a purpose. So, I bought a whole bunch of Debbie Bliss Baby Cashmerino at Rainbow Fiber, or Rainbow Yarn, whatever it was.
Rainbow Yarns and Fiber, I believe it is. I don't know.
Germantown, Tennessee. And I decided I was going to knit a sweater. And it was the Wheat Ear Cable Yoke Cardigan, which was on the, basically it's just a cardigan that's knit bottom up, Elizabeth Zimmerman style, and then there's like these little cables in the yoke.
That's a cute sweater.
Well, it was on her. So this was before I understood that gauge is important, and that just because it says to use this yarn and these needles doesn't mean that that's going to work for you. Like, you really need to measure. So this is, I call it, it's in my Ravelry project. It's called the Sad Sad Sweater. I
remember you knitting that, I think.
And
that's
it could have probably fit Laura and I both at the same time. because it turned out...
Did you rip it out?
I did, yeah. I ripped it out. I've reused about half of the yarn on a kid's, for my niece, a little knit dress. And I still have the rest of it somewhere. Oh, hey, baby. There's your Neelix.
There's Neelix.
There's your Neelix cameo. He's wearing a shirt, apparently.
What shirt? Oh, it's a Halloween shirt.
Yeah.
Way to be festive, Neelix.
Yes. So, there's your Neelix cameo. Go find Michael. So anyway, yeah, by the time I put all the pieces together, I had a feeling it wasn't going to fit. But, you know, you just keep telling yourself it'll be fine, it'll be fine. It wasn't. But nowadays, I'm much smarter about that, or realistic, I guess maybe is the word. And if I don't like it, I just stop knitting it. Unless it's for like an obligation that I've signed up to. But I obligate myself to fewer and fewer things when possible. So I try not to knit things I do not enjoy. Okay, so our next question is Middle-Aged Pearl, who says we could read the Sunday newspaper. And she's supportive. There's no actual question there. Madonna Earth says that they are selling Duck Dynasty bobbleheads at the gas station.
Yes, they are at Walmart too. You have no idea how many times I've almost bought something ridiculous this week.
I love Uncle Si on Duck Dynasty. I get that it is scripted. I do not care. It is funny, and I like him. Let's see. It says, do we like to cook? And if so, what do we like to cook the most? I'll say I'm pretty spoiled, honestly. My significant other does a lot of the cooking because he enjoys grilling, and he can make something really good out of a bunch of random stuff I would have never thought to put together. So
he is an excellent griller.
Yes, and he loves to grill. Whenever Laura's with us, we grill fish or shrimp or whatever.
Deliciousness.
And he makes a mean steak. But I like to bake more than I like to cook, but I don't do a whole lot of it lately. What about you?
I like to, I'm surprised you're not laughing at me. I like to bake rather than cook, I would say. My favorite recipe to cook would be pizza fondue.
Which is marinara sauce warmed up with cheese in it, and then she dips bread in it and eat, well, whatever, pizza rolls or whatever they're called.
No, I get fresh bread from the farmer's market, and fresh French bread from the farmer's market, and it's marinara sauce with cheese, and I doctor it up with like black olives. You could add any pizza toppings that you would like. So I tend to put in black and green olives because those are my two favorite pizza toppings. And then they're delicious. Stop making faces at me. And then spinach would be good in there too, actually. And then I chop up bread and I dip it in there, and it is pizza fondue, and it takes around maybe 10 minutes at most to cook.
Usually when Laura cooks herself dinner, she steams a bag of Brussels sprouts or a bag of rice, or she'll air pop some popcorn.
Because it's just me.
Right.
I kind of feel like sometimes it's a waste to cook just for me. So, and I enjoy rice and steamed vegetables a whole bunch, but that's the veggie-saurus in me. So
yeah.
And then question 2 is: do either of you weave? I may get a small tabletop loom like a Cricut or something less than $200, but I really don't want to take up another craft until I've knitted up more than a few projects.
We both sort of weave.
We're amateur weavers.
Very, very, very amateur weavers. I have woven 3 things.
I've woven a
2 were
scarf,
very plain
and that's
basket
it.
weave, and 1 was houndstooth, which is the same thing as basket weave. You just switch colors. Okay, it says that there's an internet connection problem, so we're going to pause.
You froze on me.
Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes our internet locks up and does stupid things, so sorry about that.
Okay. So hopefully it'll be better. Okay.
So
you are saying that you have woven 3 projects.
Yep.
All of them are scarves.
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all I got.
And I have woven a single scarf with the help of Mama Linneman.
Who worked it for
I have a flip, and you have a Cricut.
Mm-hmm.
And it's It's definitely, I've bought 2 or 3 weaving books and a DVD in the past 2 months. So, and just a helpful hint, the Interweave weaving books are available on the Kindle, and they are around a third the price as they are in hardcover. So I have them on my iPad. I have some by Liz Gibson, and I'm trying to think who else. And I have Liz Gibson's Slots and Holes DVD, which is the best name for a DVD ever. And it's just about warping the loom, rigid heddle loom in several different ways. I think for a beginner, the Cricut is a great loom.
I agree. It's very...
The flip is a little bit more space.
Pretty low cost. They're like $140-ish. And they're really pretty versatile for what they are. And you can actually... You can get a lot of... There's a group on Ravelry. Actually, there's probably more than one. But there's one that I follow called Used Tools and Equipment Classifieds. So a lot of times people will destash their more beginner products when they're upgrading to like maybe a floor loom or what have you. They'll upgrade their existing stuff for their new stuff, and not just for weaving, for spinning, for knitting, for crocheting, all that stuff. So it's a good group to watch if you're looking for something low cost. Also, Craigslist is pretty good for picking up.
Yeah, it depends on the area of the country that you're in.
Yeah, and how picked over it is. You know, sometimes you'll find a steal. I know I have a friend who picked up a wheel on Craigslist for like $50, and the wheel was worth $500 or more. So you just have to kind of keep your eye out.
And sometimes guilds in your area will be have either equipment sale days, or there'll be trades, or so that might be if there's a weaving guild in your area, that would be a great resource.
And a lot of them will allow you to borrow their certain equipment for no fee or for a very low cost fee. I know when I went with Laura's sister Becky in Philly for a machine knitting class, it was held at the Weavers Guild house, and they have like 8 floor looms and a dozen tabletop looms that they can loan out to their members at any time. So it might be worth checking out, you know.
Yep.
I feel like we didn't really answer the question, but we answered other questions, so I'm counting it as a win.
Jay Goldsman has several questions. So the first is, how do you approach festivals like Rhinebeck? They overwhelm me a bit. So I look at the vendors list. The very first thing I do is I look at the vendors list, and if there's a map, I do that. So if there's a certain area if there's a certain vendor that I definitely want to see, I map that out ahead of time. So I go with a purpose, which kind of can help get you to where you're going, I feel like. And then I'll wander around.
Yeah, I would say another essential part would be to be prepared to be flexible.
Yes.
For me, for Rhinebeck and any big festival, or small or big festival, this is just my fiber, and it's not all of it. This is yarn, and then there's 2 more over there you can't see that's yarn. I know that I don't need anything. So for me, it's easy to not go and say, oh, I need to be in this line at this time so I can be the first to get this or that. I just don't feel like I need any. There's nothing that's like, it's got that hold on me right now, so that makes it easier. Plus, I enjoy walking around and talking to people, you know, talking to the vendors at the booths, or talking to the people who are demonstrating spinning or knitting or whatever. So I would also enjoy eating my way through festivals, especially like Rhinebeck, because it has a lot of very specific foods, artichokes French and lamb chili and that sort of thing. I would say being flexible is probably going to be your friend for
yeah.
And also,
I think that's a good tip.
Go with a friend or make a plan to meet up with someone there, even if it's somebody you've never met, somebody you talk to on Ravelry. Go with a plan to have lunch with someone or what have you.
Yeah. It's a good way to meet and associate with new people, definitely. With so many small yarn companies, how do you judge the best ones? After a while, they all look alike. I think it depends on whether you're looking on a big, huge site like Etsy or if you're seeing the yarn in person. Because on Etsy, I feel like photographs and good descriptions
you can't smell a photograph.
You can't. And you can't, one of the things, let me find a skein of yarn.
Okay, I'm going to let you talk. And then I'm going to go and find what's in the dryer that's making all that noise that I can hear.
Okay.
And I'll be right back.
So Miss Babs is a wonderful dyer. This is just something that I grabbed. So when you see a skein in person, this is kind of twisted up, but you can kind of untwist a little bit and see where the ties are. I'm not certain that I can just undo this because it's mine. And most actual people will allow you to undo. They actually have theirs tagged, so you can't. So it's a little bit harder, but you can kind of open it up. Let me find a different skein. That's not working to my needs. So I can, another crafty girl, and I can open this up, and I can kind of look where her ties are, and I can see on a good dyed skein, there will not be any whites around a tie. That is unintentional. On well-dyed yarn in general, there should be a consistent color that occurs around a tie. When people get white that is unintentional around ties, it's because they've tied their ties too tight and the dye can't go in there. So that's one of the things, if I have a skein in person, that's one of the things I look at. I also, to be honest with you, look at presentation. She's got a nice tight twist to her skeins. So does Miss Babs, and they look nice. And you can also kind of spread it out a little bit, check out the fiber, look at the ply structure, and I look at stuff like a skein of yarn, and I look at the fiber composition. So this one is 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon. So I know that this is going to be good socks because it's got that nylon and it's got a nice tight twist to it. So when I look at yarn, either online or in festivals and indie dyers, I look for characteristics of that yarn for the project that I have in mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I also think that Ravelry can be helpful in this.
Oh, that's a good tip.
If you go on Ravelry and you look at a specific yarn, and then there's a tab for comments. And if a yarn doesn't have many comments, generally that means there's not a lot of issues with that yarn, because people are much less likely to actively go out and make the effort to put a positive comment on a yarn versus a negative comment on a yarn.
I think it's like Amazon.com. You have to read the reviews.
Right.
Just because it has 4 stars doesn't mean that it's what you're looking for.
Correct. And, you know, also, you kind of have to keep in mind what the reviews say. And this is actually something I taught my son when he was looking for books on Amazon, was just because it says 3 out of 5 and people say this yarn sheds and it gets up my nose. Well, you need to look at the fiber content. If it's Angora or another type of fiber that's it sheds, and that it just does, and there's nothing that you can do about it, well, you can't really fault the yarn for that. Like, you have to sort of go into it and understand the properties of the yarn and what you should expect out of it. When people say that a cashmere blend yarn pills, a cashmere is a very short fiber. It's going to pill based on how much friction.
The nature of the beast, yeah.
There's only so much you can do about it. And another point...
And I think Knitter's Book of Yarn is a great book for looking at fiber composition and getting a good basic idea of fiber composition in regards to knitting.
So I would also, if you have an issue with the yarn, I would check and see what the standards are for the industry. Something that I learned, because I am friends with a dyer, Stacy of Tempted, I put my foot in my mouth huge when I was at her house once. And we were talking about yarn, and I was complaining endlessly about this yarn I had got that had a knot in it. And I was so annoyed that this yarn had a knot in it. And the industry standard is 3 knots per 400 yards of yarn. Or it was at that point. I don't know if it's changed. And realistically, if I think about it now, it's not like Stacy of Tempted mills her own yarn, right? She has to work with what she's given from the mill. So you have to understand that those dyers who put out yarn that never have knots, they go to special effort to make that happen.
Yeah.
And they dye one-off skeins and then discount them if they have a knot in it. But you kind of have to look at it from all sides. And I got a little preachy there, and I'm sorry, but I learned the hard way by putting my foot in my mouth with a friend of mine. So I'm trying to avoid the embarrassment for anyone else.
Okay, the next question down from her is, Ravelry swaps seem really complicated. Are they worth the trouble? I think that depends on the swap, and I think it depends on who's running the swap. I had, the last swap that I did on Ravelry was the Rebecca Danger swap.
The monster.
And it was in the Rebecca Danger group, which is a very nice group. It was well modded. It was by someone who had modded like 35 monster swaps before that, knew what she was doing, knew what
problems that you might encounter.
Yeah, she knew. Yeah, she took care of all issues, and I didn't have any issues. I was, but when you put yourself out there with a swap, there is a chance that you are not going to get something.
Yes.
There's always that chance. So you have to decide if it's worth the risk on your end.
Laura and I organized swaps for Loopy U Spring Fling for several years. And it was always fun. I never had any problems. We did have a couple of people who dropped and we had to do angels. But I will not do a swap where it's round robin, where you give to one person, that person gives to another person, and then it just, as a circle, it comes back to you, because I feel like there's less accountability versus if I'm sending Laura something, I know Laura's the one that's supposed to send something back to me.
Yeah.
I feel like there's more accountability there. But that being said, I will never organize a swap again if I can avoid it. Because it does require, it is something
it takes
that,
a lot of patience on
the
moderator's
and it
part.
needs to be something that you're excited about and you're passionate about. And I'm totally open to people hosting a swap in our group or whatever, but I will not be hosting it. Like, that's something that you guys can do and that's fine, but I don't want to be involved in it just because you have to be able to put the time into it, and I just don't have it. So I would say, yes, they are worth the trouble, assuming that it's a group that's done a swap before or the moderator has run a swap before, and I would only do it if it's one-to-one, not a round-robin swap. That's my personal thing.
What should we know about yarn clubs? Yarn clubs and fiber clubs can be tons of fun. Like, absolutely fun. I just got my fiber club shipment from Instaworld, and it is gorgeous. And I would highly recommend her clubs. What I would say to you, if you are looking to join a yarn or fiber club, I would go to that person's Ravelry page first. A lot of times dyers have groups, and make sure that there are no ongoing issues with customer service or communication, because the most important thing with, and I've been very, very blessed in that I have not had an indie dyer flake on me on a club, but there have been people who have.
Because in a lot of cases, when you sign up for a club, you give all that money right away. And it might be 2 months, then 4 months, then 6 months, and on before you get what you've paid for. And for, the vast majority, 95% of dyers, they're credible and they're going to get you what you paid for. And, they value their reputation and your happiness, so they're going to do what needs to be done. But
sometimes real life interferes.
Right. So, like Laura said, I would check their history and just make sure they're established and what the refund policies are in the event that there's an issue. And
if you're nervous about it, I would do like a 3-month one, like the Another Crafty Girl Club, or Vesper, or a shorter period club, or one that's billed month to month, like the Into the World, or Enchanted Knoll Fiber. Or the Kaleidoscope one that I do something that's a shorter period of time, so that you're only putting $40 out maybe 2 months before versus a larger amount of money.
She wants to know if we felt it.
I have felt it.
I don't often, but I have.
I think it works best with a top loader machine versus a front loader machine, although there are machines, like little itty bitty machines that you can buy just primarily for felting. I'm trying to think if I have anything felted in here. It
locks, so mine wouldn't be good because you have to be able to open it and get into it. So
and you can always hand felt too. Like Leslie's deer hat, the antlers on that are hand felted.
Yeah. So yes, we have. It's probably not something that either of us do a lot of, but
I like the tiny owl knits patterns that have felting in them. Are very cute.
Yeah.
Blocking is still a mystery. Do you have any tips? My tip for blocking is to not hurry.
Yeah.
To take your time.
Put on an audiobook or good music.
Take stretch breaks. You can always re-spritz down with a bottle, a spray bottle, the item. But after you block it and it's dried, it's you're better off taking your time the first time around than having to redo it. And I would invest in blocking wires. The Infinity wires that we did a review of are really nice by far my favorite. They are nice and flexible. They come with everything you need. Always have more pins than you think you're going to need. I think I have like 6 things of pins, and on some projects I've gone through every single one of them.
Yep.
Let's see. What else with blocking? I have 2 blocking boards that work really well for me, but like Leslie has the foam blocks that you buy, like kids mat blocks,
like
and those
the
work for her.
exercise play mats with the letters in them, and then you just put them together, and my cats like to sleep on them. But yeah, be aware that you will probably have kitty help if you decide to block on the floor, which is what I primarily do. I put the blocks down and then put the item on top of the blocks. What do you do to bring your knitting to the next level? I don't know that I have a good answer for that.
I try to learn a new skill or try a new technique out. I think Craftsy and the classes there are a great way to build skills. Taking classes from local guilds is always my first. If I'm in an area and someone's offering a class, especially if it's a person who I know their reputation, I think taking a class live is like the number one choice for me. Craftsy would be my number 2 choice, and then a book such as Knitting Without Tears, or Sally Melville has a new sweater book out. There's some great sweater books. It depends on the technique you want to learn.
Like, do something that scares you. Like, if steeking scares you, make a little coaster or something. Like, do something that scares you, and then you'll feel accomplished, and you'll feel like a big girl. And I don't know. That would be my advice.
I will tell you that the Harry Potter House Cup does do that for me to some degree, because it kind of pushes you, because they'll have like a prompt, like it has to be steeked, or it has to be cabled, or there has to be beads, or it has to use this kind of technique, and that, like entrelac, and that'll help break me out of my little rut that I'm in. So joining a knit along would also be a great way to kind of bring it to the next level as well. Do something like that, like Leslie said, that scares you. As far as a cow goes. Oh, the next one's about steeking.
Okay.
There you go.
We're at an hour almost.
Okay.
So we're going to answer the questions in the 12th post, and then we'll probably stop for today. And then we'll answer questions.
Minerva Turkey's next after that. That's awesome.
Actually, let's do hers, and then we'll do number 12, because there's a lot of different questions in there. We'll do hers on the next show. So I'm going to mark her.
That sounds perfect.
So Minerva only has 2 questions.
Okay. So Minerva Turkey says she has a couple questions. What do you love / hate about podcasting? So this is the appropriate week for that.
Seriously.
In regards to technical difficulties, for
That's
sure.
really the only thing that I can say I hate about podcasting is when you put a great show, you record this great show, and there's lots of like
so awesome.
So many funny moments, and then it doesn't work.
The scary Wolcombs will never be seen.
Seriously, like, it's very frustrating. And Laura and I we do not do a scripted show, and so even by the last time that we recorded the show, like, it felt forced, and that's not what we want to do. So I would say the only thing I really hate about podcasting is that I will say that putting yourself out there to the public can be detrimental in that people like to poke you, like pick on you sometimes, and that can be annoying. But for the most part, there's nothing but love, and I appreciate that. And that is what I love the most about it, is all the people.
Oh yeah, the people
that we get to meet.
All the people, all the time.
And the teachers that we've been able to get at our events, and how the teachers have met the people, and the vendors connect with the teachers, and like all these little connections are made, and that is what, like, that's the whole reason we started the SSK event, was just because we were able to make some nice connections at Spring Fling, so we wanted other people to be able to do that. And podcasting has allowed us to have a wide enough audience to support our event, and who knows what will come in the future. So just the people and their receptivity and kindness, and
the kindness of knitters knows no bounds.
This is of crafters in general. I mean, that's what I love most about it.
And I love having people come up to events and being able to talk to people. I definitely take after my father. My father's nickname is Wheezy, for those of you who haven't watched the show before, and we like to BS a lot. And we like to talk to people. And my life would be so much more boring if it did not have people in it.
And we call Wheezy Mayor Wheezy, because wherever he goes, he makes friends, and he's talking to the crowd. And I say that with love, because I adore him. And I don't think he's ever met a stranger. And you are very much the same way. So. And
then how do you explain podcasting to non-fiber people? Well, I had to do that yesterday, because I have some big real life stuff going on, and I had to meet with someone yesterday to sign some papers, and I was explaining to him that I had to meet him after 6:30 because I was doing a knitting podcast. And he just kind of looked at me, and I said, well, I told him how many people watch, and I said, we just sit around and chat, and it's just so much fun. And he was just like, alrighty, and just moved on.
I'll meet you at 6:30, whatever you say.
Yeah. So it depends on the person. It's the Muggle people. It's very funny to do. My students, some of them know that I podcast, because another teacher who teaches technology was like, a Miss Linneman podcast. And they were like, Miss Linneman, you podcast? And I'm like, it is about knitting. It is the most exciting thing you will ever see. Because if I say to them, no, don't watch that,
then they'll want to watch it. Yeah.
Then they'll want to watch it. But I'm like, it is about knitting and spinning. You will love it. And sometimes I talk about books. Like,
things get
good
crazy.
job, Miss Linneman, and they move on. I don't think a single one of them has ever watched the show, which is how we like it. But
I had to explain to my boss when I took off time for SSK this year. I took off a lot of time, like a whole week, because I had to drive down and all this other stuff. And that was fine, because I've been working for this company for almost 15 years, so I get plenty of PTO. But she said, so what are you doing in Nashville? And I tried to kind of explain it to her, that there's this knitting, like a convention sort of. And she was like, oh, and you run that? And I was like, yeah, my friend and I, this is the second year we've been putting it on. And, there's a bunch of people coming. And she was like, oh, really? How many people? And I told her, and she was like, wow, did you have to rally to get that many people to come? And I was like, actually, we had quite an extensive wait list. And, like, it's very... people don't get it, and that's fine. I don't expect or want people to get it. Everybody's got their own thing. Some guys can't go to sleep without watching Sports Center, you know, and some people need their British Sherlock Holmes, and you know, whatever it is. So
oh, I told my APs, my 2 guy APs, about Spinzilla, and I think I blew their minds because I brought my spinning wheel to work the one day, and they were just like, wait, how many yards do you spin? And you came in 2nd place?
Yeah, I know.
How many
There's that many people in the world that spin?
How many miles is that? Like, they're super supportive, but they were like, yeah, you came in 2nd. Yeah. Like, they have no idea. But it was very funny. I think I blew their minds for a couple. And then one of them, his grandmother had cotton cards.
Yeah.
So he had to explain to me what cotton cards were. It was very funny.
Aww.
I adore my APs. They are awesome people. So we are going to call it quits for the day. I did want to say, I don't know if I said this earlier because it's been a night and I forget, but I am, I do have some real life stuff going on, and I might not be as responsive to emails.
Are you not telling them that you're going to adopt a Malawian baby? Is that what you're keeping that under wraps?
That's what I'm doing. I'm adopting 18 cats. So, that's cryptic. Laura is cryptic, but hopefully things will work out or not work out, and I'll share with y'all later.
Yeah.
I don't want to jinx it by talking too much about it, but I might not be as responsive on the interwebs as I normally am.
But I'm actually more responsive than usual lately, so you can contact me if you need me.
So we're playing opposite day,
yeah.
And or maybe opposite 2 months, and so Leslie is the person to contact now.
Yeah, I'm like a real grown up now.
Let's not talk about
so anyway, with any luck, this will recorded, because if not, like, I'm gonna flip the table and just it's gonna be on. But I think we'll be okay. So we'll see you guys in like 3 days when we record again. And we'll actually talk about our knitting
by then.
Yeah, I'm turning a heel, so who knows?
Oh, good.
So
I increased too much, so I'm gonna rip back because I wanted 48 stitches and I'm at like 58 now.
Oops.
But if this was a mouth, I'd be awesome. It's like a Muppet mouth.
You are one weird girl.
It's like a Muppet mouth. Anyway.
So we will I'll keep this thread on watch, and we'll answer a question every week. We'll purloin the what do you want to hear about from the Knitmore Girls.
Yeah. It'll be fun.
And so we'll
purloin not only the word purloin, but also their segment.
Yep. One up. Just kidding. We love their segment.
2 segments for the price of 1.
So we'll see you guys in a few days, and until then, cross your fingers that this works for us. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.